All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Good morning. Hopefully everyone had a beautiful, uplifting Shabbos, a great zichus, Baruch Hashem, to be able to begin another week of the daf together. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors. Thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Teves. The Daf Yomi Shir for dedicating all the Shirman Drashos this month in memory of Mr. Milton Martyr, Mordechai David ben Rafal HaKohen Zichron Livracha. To thank Shirley Elbaum family for dedicating all the Shiurim and Drashos this month, the creation of the yard site of Jerry Elbaum, Yaakov Couple ben Avram Menachem. Our week of learning sponsors, Paul and Kathy Pollack for dedicating the week of learning, commission of the yard site of Paul's sister, Leah Bas Shmuel Zichron Livracha, and Ayala and Sarah Steinberg, and the schus of Rafu Shalima for Shulamis Bas Susha. Our Daf Yomi sponsors for today, Ed and Iris Miller, Le'iloi Nishmas Mordechai ben Zev Meir, and Leah Liza Bas Michael. Zichron Livracha. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the Neshamos will have an Aliyah, the families a Nechama, and all those who require a refuah should have one together with Kol Cholei Yisrael. Also with that, let us begin. So today's daf is Samech Ches 68. We are actually picking up on the top of Samech Ches for a change. So as I remember again, just to reorient ourselves a little bit, yesterday we began the new parak, and in the new parak, we were talking about the concept, a very specific type of case, namely Nara HaMu'urasa. Ultimately, again, who's the Nara Murasa? So that is a girl Nara between the ages of 12 years old and 6 months. Ultimately, again, who is in the stage of Erusin, initial stage of marriage. So our mission was focused on who has the ability to be mefer her neder, who has the ability to go ahead and annul her neder. So the Mishnah told us who has the ability. It is a joint process between the father and the husband. Now, I will say a couple of interesting things came out from this. Number one, we've transitioned. How have we transitioned? We've transitioned from Hataras Nedarim to Hafaras Nedarim. Wherein lies the distinction, at least over here, between Hatara and Hafara? Hatara requires a Pesach, right? Hafara does not require any kind of Pesach. In other words, they're all saying in these cases over here, where the father or the husband is going ahead, or I should say, the father and the husband are annulling the neder, there's no need for a Pesach. There's no need for charot. In fact, Rabbi said the fundamental distinction is Hatara is a vower-driven process. In other words, if I made a neder and I want Hataras Nedarim, it's on me. I have to go to the Chacham. I have to figure out the Pesach. Hafara, conversely, is something that is being done, at least in this case, being done to the vower. The girl took the vow, took the neder, and ultimately, again, now this is a process which is being visited upon her. Whether she wants it or not is really, it's not bala'in, it's irrelevant. So let's say, she might say, I'm happy with the neder, I love the neder, I'm going to accustomed to this neder, the neder and I are close, right? But Lamais, again, it doesn't make a difference. If the father and husband choose to go ahead and annul it, it's annulled. Good. So we'll say, again, quick review, we are looking for the source for this concept. How do we know that a Nara HaMurasa, her father and her husband, have to be the ones who annul it? Yes, in yesterday's daf, we had the opinion of Rabbah. Rabbah learned it out from the pasuk of Vimayo Siyel Ish Unidare Aleha. We went through an entire process. Shabbos say that brings us now to Samech Ches Amud Aleph. To be Rabbi Shmuel Tana. Shabbos say, to be Rabbi Shmuel, they had a different approach. Right? They had a different approach, ultimately, again, for how to learn out this concept. Remember, what I want to point out over here is no one is disagreeing about the bottom line halacha, which is that for a Nara HaMe'urasa, her father and her husband must jointly annul the neder. We'll say, by the way, jointly how? What else jointly? Simultaneously, right? So it's simultaneously, jointly. In other words, even you can't say it can't be one after the other. It's got to be simultaneously, jointly. Now, so nobody's arguing on that. The Rabbi Shmuel is just coming along and advancing another potential source for this halacha. So the Rabbi Shmuel Tara, bein ish leishto, bein av lebito. So we'll say the Gemara quotes the pasuk. The pasuk in its entirety is Eila hachukim, asher tziva Hashem es Moshe. These are the laws that Hashem taught Moshe. Bein ish leishto, between a man and his wife. Bein av lebito, between a father and his daughter. Benu areha beis aviha, when she is a Nara in her father's home. So what says the Rabbi Shmuel says, Mikan, from this pasuk we learn, Lenara Me'urasa Shavi Ubayla Mefir Nedareha. From here we learn that for Nara Me'urasa, her father and her brother jointly have the ability to annul her vow. Let's take a quick look at the Ran. So the Ran writes over here, how do you see this from the pasuk? Now, just before we even get into the Ran, what's interesting is how the pasuk reads. These are the laws that Hashem taught Moshe, right? Remember, again, regarding Nedarim. Bein ishla ishto, bein av lebito, benu areha beisavia. So we'll say, if you pause, you see, if you're not learning this sugya, you would kind of just read this pasuk and say, okay, fine. But now that I'm learning this sugya, what do I see over here? I see bein ishla ishto, bein av lebito. When is there a situation where a husband and a wife have a connection, but a father and his daughter still have a connection? Binu areha, when she is a nara hamiurasa, because in that case she's married, but what? She's also a beis aviha. So we'll say it's a beautiful pasuk. It's actually in other words, we'll say it's one of those things where, like I said, you would read, if you would have read this pasuk 3 days ago, somebody would have asked you to say, "What's the meaning of the pasuk?" You would have said, I don't know, right? But again, right? But lamaisa, right? But lamaisa, now that I see it in this context, I understand how Rabbi Shmuel is actually using it. So now look at the Ran. So the Ran says, top Ran on the left-hand side, to be Rabbi Shmuel, ben ishla ishto ben avlabito, mikalan ara murasa shavia ubayla mefirna derahal, the mashmalei de benara hamurasa iri. They both say the pasuk must be talking about an ara murasa. Why? Midichsiv bahukra benuhara beisavia. So both say, here's what's interesting is, in all seriousness, before you would see this Gemara, you would assume the Gemara is talking about different things. Ben ishla ishto is one case. Bein avla bito is a different case, and benuara beis aviha sounds like a third case. Tiberi Rishon is coming and saying, no, it's all one case. It's all one case. There's a case, bein ishla ishto, bein avla bito. So there's a girl who is married to someone, but she's still tethered to her father. Right? Furthermore, benuara, she's a nara, and therefore she's still beis aviha. What's the case when you put it all together? So we'll say this is the case of Nara Me'urasa, and the pasuk itself, pretty explicit. We'll say, by the way, this pasuk, Rabbi Shmuel's pasuk, is much more, the very Shmuel's pasuk is much more, or seems to be much more explicit than Rabbi's pasuk, teaching us ultimately again that for Nara Me'urasa, her father and her husband must jointly annul her neder. I will say, by the way, I just want to point out something interesting. As I was looking at the daf yesterday, in all of the new Gemaras, so if you notice, you have like in the margin, the Torah or Hashalim, right? So we'll say what that means is the Gemara quotes a part of a pasuk, and in the margin, the entire pasuk is quoted. So unless unless you're using an older version, unless you're using your Chassan Shas or something, right? Hey, so again, so Lamaisa, it's here, it's in the margin. Also, it struck me yesterday. This Gemara only makes sense. It's only the way to understand the Gemara is not from the part of the pasuk that's quoted, right? In other words, the way to understand the Gemara is from the rest of the pasuk that's not quoted, which is really fascinating because it tells us that when we learn Gemara, so the Gemara presupposes that we know Tanakh. I'll never forget when I was learning yeshiva. So I was learning with Rav Ruvain Katz. Rav Ruvain Katz his father was Rav Michal Katz. Excuse me. His father was Rav Ruvain Katz. The Degel Ruvain was a Talmud Mufak of Rav Isser Zalman Meltzer. So this was my Rebbe when I learned Chulin with him. And I never forget. He was an old European Jew. So one time we were learning Gemara. The pasuk was Vikar lecha v'achalta mizivcho. Right, that was the pasuk. Right. So he turns and says, Silber, where's the pasuk? I said, it's on Chulin daf whatever it was. He got so angry. He quoted, he said, how are you ever, he didn't get angry, but how are you ever going to be a Talmud Chacham? He quoted Rashi that said, Makala miskashetes bechav dalit kishutin, af Talmud Chacham sarech liskashet bechav dalit sifrei Tanach. Just like a kala used to wear 24 adornments, right? So to a Talmud Chacham has to adorn himself with the 24 Sfarim of Tanakh. He's Silber, you know that? I said, yeah, Rabbi, it's a Rashi. So yeah, what is it? What pasuk is it on? I wasn't gonna. I don't know. That's in Tanakh, right? So anyway, listen. So just like it's such a humbling experience, right? Here we are. We're going through Shas. And Baruch Hashem, many of you have already finished Shas. Some of you already finished Shas more than once, and it's so humbling sometimes. And in my journey through Shas, I'm like, okay, had the Gemara not quoted the rest of that pasuk, I would not. I don't know the end of it. I don't know the end of the pasuk by heart, which I should. I've learned the Chumash enough times. I should. So it's very humbling that no matter how much we learn and how much we think we've accomplished, sometimes it's actually interesting that some of the fundamentals also, which is why I'll just put in a plug. It's kidai, by the way, to also do, like, first of all, to make sure to do Shtayim Mikra, to do the weekly parsha, and whether you're doing it again, Shtayim Mikra you could do with Unkelos, Shtayim Mikra you could do with Rashi, Shtayim Mikra you could even just do, even if you do with the Art Scroll translation, because Art Scroll is not a translation. The Art Scroll translation is a commentary itself. So the idea of Shtayim Mikra ve'echad Targum is reading each pasuk twice, and with a commentary, I will say, it's so important. It's so important because otherwise we're missing fundamental building blocks. Just like after you finish Shtayim Mikra, it's kidai to do Nach Yomi. You don't have to do the program of Nach Yomi, but to do one parak of Navi a day. One parak of Navi, and that you can even read in English. One parak of Navi a day, 10 minutes. 10 minutes. That's all. I know it's a lot between Daf Yomi, Mishnah Yomi, Nach Yomi, Shtayim Mikra ve'echad Targum, right? Mesilas Yesharim, Smichas Chaver, Chasidus Chabura. But again, that's our goal. Our goal, Baruch Hashem, here is to give you a well-rounded spiritual diet. But the amazing part is, it sounds like a lot. But it's not. It's not. It's so incredibly doable. But in any event, I would say it's just very humbling. Sometimes you think like, okay, we're doing Maseches Nedarim, Daf Samech. Okay, then there's like a pasuk, and I realize that I just have to brush up on the fundamentals. Any event. So I'll say, so the son of Rabbi Shmuel. Let's go weiter. So this is why I never finish even like the shortest of dapim on time. All right, but let's go weiter. It says the Gemara, but it's a good ma'isa. It's a ma'isa, I tell you, with my Rabbi that sticks to me to this very. And again, I want to be clear. Just want to clarify the story. It wasn't an embarrassing like getting angry. It was like it was a teachable moment. It was a teachable moment for a Rebbe to impress upon a Talmud that if you ever want to really see success in life, you start with the fundamentals, become proficient in the fundamentals, and build up from there. Otherwise, what you're building is on shaky ground. And it was very, very true, very true. And eventually, the Gemara goes weiter. Rabbi Shmuel im hayosi ali ishmai avidle. So we'll say, okay, fine. So now we have a new drasha. So the shaila is, what does Tanakh Rabbi Shmuel? What does he do with the drasha of Rabbah? Right, the pasuk that we had on Samech Zayin Amud Aleph of v'mayosi al ish unidar alal. What does he do with that pasuk? To which the Gemara says, mokim liidach de Rabbah. I will say he uses it for a different drasha of Rabbah. Now the truth is, I will say we're going to see. It's actually very interesting. The reason why today's daf is very short, I will say, is going to know days, is because virtually all of today's daf are citations from Gemaras and Mishnayos that we're going to see later on. So, for example, I will say, so we're going to see Tanakh Rabbi Shmuel uses that pasuk for a different teaching of Rava. Now, what's the different teaching of Rava? Take a look at the Ran again. So the Ran writes, "Mokim lakidach the Rabba davar lekamon makish kol mehavir shnia the kol mehavir rishona." V'Rabbanan svir lehu the tarti shams. I will say, so we're not going to get into this case, but I'll just give you the coming attractions. The coming attractions are that actually, coming attractions are like this. We're going to talk about a case, I will say, of a woman who becomes a Nara, who becomes betrothed, right? Nara Murasa. And then what happens? Nara Murasa, father and husband have joint ability to be made for the Neder. Let's say husband dies. Husband dies during Erisin. And now, again, she once again becomes an Arusa. So what are the father's rights in that case, or what are they not? So that's going to be a machlokus between Rabbah and the Rabbanon. Ultimately, and the Ran says, "V'Rabbanon svirluhu tetarti shamsuna ikar krali nara murasa taviu bala mefir nedareha utrain havios lakushish nilrishona." So we're going to see there's a machlokes. Does the father have rights the second time she becomes an arusa or not? So that's the machlokes Rabbanon and Rabbah. And ultimately, again, Tanakh Rabbi Shmuel would use the pasuk of v'hayos yalish to ultimately back up the position of Rava in that case. Okay. The Rava, Hi, Detani Rabbi Shmuel, my Avidle. So we'll say now the reverse question. So what does Rava do with the pasuk that Rabbi Shmuel use? Right? Rabbi say so. The Rabbi Shmuel used the pasuk ben ishli ishto ben av lebito. What does Rava, who uses the pasuk of vim hayosiel ish to teach this halacha, what does he use the Rabbi Shmuel's pasuk for? To which the Gemara says, "Ma'avalei mibayle lo omer shabal mefer nedarim shebeino lebeino." So I will say this is actually very interesting. This we're going to get into. Again, I will say I want to point out all of these sugyas we're going to spend significant time on. They're all fascinating. I will say in the context of a marriage itself, we know that a husband has the ability to annul his wife's vows. The shaila we're going to get into is what type of vows does he have the ability to annul? So Rava learns out from the pasuk of the Rabbi Shmuel, Bein ish ishto, bein av lebito. What does that teach me? That what type of nedarim does a husband have the ability to annul? Nedarim that impact him and her. Well, take a look at the Ran for just a moment. This is the Ran in the second of the intermediate lines. Lomar shabal mefer dvarim shebeno lebeina. The nidre inui nefesh behedjik sivi. Kol nevder v'chol shvuas esrolanos nefesh. Nafesh ubein ish leishto itzricha ledvarim shebeno lebeina. So we're going to see like this. There are two types of nedarim that a husband could be made for his wife. Number one are what we call nidre inui nefesh. And we'll say, what's inui nefesh? Nedarim of an afflictive nature. So we'll say, what does that mean? She takes a neder not to eat meat, not to drink wine, not to whatever, anything that's afflictive. He has the ability to go ahead and annul that. And I will say, that actually is going to be explicit in the pasuk as we're going to see. The other type of nedarim that he has the ability to go ahead and annul are nedarim which impact their relationship. That's what we call tvarim beino lebeina. Now, what's included in that category, in Meretz Hashem, we're going to see in a later on sugya. So we'll say, but the point over here is Rava uses the pasuk of the Rabbi Shmuel to teach this halacha that a husband has the ability to annul nedarim that are beino lebeina. Okay, fine. So we'll say, get ready for this. This is great. Ibaylahu. So we'll say, here's the shaila. Megiz gayis o maklish kalish. So we'll say, listen to this shaila. I should read it there. Ibaylahu, Baal, megas gayis o maklish kalish. So we'll say, here's what we know. So here's what we've established. What have we established? Everyone agrees that a nara hamurasa, who has the ability to annul her vows? Husband and father. Husband and father jointly, simultaneously. Everyone agrees with that. The only machlokias is what? The source, right? So Rava brings his pasuk. The Rabbi Shmuel bring their pasuk. We've also now spent time explaining what each one does with the pasuk of the other. Fine. Rabbi say, now the ask such a yesodistic question. Baal, so now say, let's say now one of the parties annuls his portion. So let's play this out. Nara Murasa made a neder. And now let's say Baal, the husband, annuls the neder. When one of the parties annuls his chelek, does that have an impact, or what is the impact of that partial annulment on a neder? What does Rabbi say? Is it megas gayis? Now let's just translate the words literally. Megas gayis means to cut off. Does it cut off, lop off part of the neder, or miklash kalish, or weaken it? Rabbi say, take a look at the Ran. This is great. Listen to this. We'll say, so now we're going in the first wide line of the Ran. Ibaylahu, Baal megas gayis miklash kalish. Kilomar, here we go. Kilomar, arus she'eno mefer ella b'shet fasei da'av. So when a husband, right, the arus is the husband, when he goes there, now remember, when he annuls the neder, generally, he can't annul without the partnership of the father. But let's say the husband does it. Let's say the husband, right, the Nara Murasa makes a neder, she makes a neder, and husband says, I may for your neder. So we know, is that an effective hafara? No. Why? He needs the father. The shaila is, has he done something? So do we say, Kishemei for chelko, megas gayis kilomar, shechote chatzi haneder legamre, umevatlo, v'chatzi ava'acha nishar chazak kibetchila, v'lo iklish leiklal. So we'll say, do we say that maybe when the husband annuls the neder, what has he done? He's essentially lopped off 50% of the neder. The other 50% remains fully intact, but he's lopped off 50% of the neder. We'll see what that means in just a moment. So he's lopped off 50% of the neder, but the other one remains intact, right? Miklash kalish. Or the other possibilities, no. He doesn't lop off 50% of the neder. Rather, what does he do? He weakens the neder in its entirety. O nema, right? O miklash kalish. Telo nema chata chatzia neder. Telebatul palga v'idach palga kedikai kai. Ela ba'faras ha'aras miklashu de kalish like kuli neder. So we'll say this is the shaila. This is the shaila, right? Such a hakira, right? So now the husband is now. Okay, I want to be clear. The great part about this sugya is no one is arguing on the core facts. What are the core facts? That when a nara hamurasa makes a neder, there's only one way to be made for that neder, and that's how? That's how? The joint simultaneous hafara of the husband and the father. Everyone's agreeing with that. We're just trying not to delve into mechanics. So here's a hakira. So now, husband is made for his chelek. What's happened to the neder? Do we view that as if he's lopped off 50% of the neder? So the other half that remains is still in full force, but there's 50% missing? Or no, he doesn't lop off anything, but his hafara has the ability to weaken or downgrade the severity of the neder. So we'll say, watch this. Where does this come up? So we'll say, so kigon, dinadra mitrain zaysin, v'shama arus, v'hefarla. We'll say, this is great. Let's say the Nara Murasa, she makes a neder. Get ready for this. I'm not going to eat these 2 olives. So she said, Trezaysin, right there, 2 olives. She says, I hereby take a neder. I'm not going to eat these 2 olives. Okay. The Arus hears it. The Heferla. And ultimately, what does he do? He does, right? He annuls his portion. So I'll say, now what happens? He annuls it. And what does she do? She eats the olives. How many olives does she eat? 2 olives. Now watch this. Mega's guy is lakye. So I'll say, if at the end of the day you say that when he does his afara, so what he does is he lops off 50% of the neder. So I'll say at most his afara could cover what? 1 olive. But what did she eat? 2 olives. So therefore she's in violation of her neder, and therefore she'll get malchus for neder violation. On the other hand, miklash kalish. If you say on the other hand, no. When the arus is made for his part, what does he do? He downgrades the severity of the neder. In other words, even though you need both parties to annul the neder, annulment by one of them ultimately downgrades the severity of the neder. That's what it means, miklash kalish, and isura ba'almahu. And maybe even when she eats the olives, right, she's violated a neder, but a downgraded neder. And therefore, again, it's usr, it's an isser, but perhaps she would not get malchus, she would not get lashes for violation of her neder. So what's here the shaila? It's a fascinating shaila. By the way, what's also interesting is that the Gemara is presupposing that partial revocation has any effect at all, right? Because remember, again, up until I saw this, if you would have asked me, what happens when the arus is made for the neder by himself, I would have answered, as you would have answered, nothing. So what's interesting over the Gemara says, no, it presupposes there must be some effect. There must be some effect ultimately, again, of the aruses or the father. It doesn't matter who's doing it. So the shaila is, what's the effect? Mega's guy is, does a lop off 50%? In other words, I'm the husband, I can lop off my chelek, right? I can lop off 50%. Or no. You can't remove 50%. What you can do is downgrade the severity of the neder so that if she does transgress, it doesn't have the same severity. So we'll say, So that's what it says. So what's the shot? And I was saying this is going to take us the rest of the daf. I just want to point this out very interesting. I will say I think that there's also like a yesodistic concept in marriage over here about like what is the role of a husband, right? Ibaylahu, right? So Gemara says Baal. What is a husband's job, right? What is his responsibility towards his wife? Megas Gaias. Now I will say, what does Megas Gaias mean? Is it a husband's responsibility ultimately, again, to distance his wife from anything that's detrimental and difficult? In other words, is it a husband's responsibility to be a complete protector? Or miklash kalish? Can't be a complete protector, but what can you do? You could help to lighten her load. a yisodistic shaila in the role and responsibility of a husband. Mega's guy is a protector, or miklash kalish, or lighten the load. And I will say, what's the answer? Now be careful. Be very careful, right? I was like, so the truth is, it's right. The answer, of course, is really both, and it depends so much on the different stages of marriage. Sometimes it is the absolute responsibility of a husband to cocoon his wife and to protect her, to be the protector. That sometimes is absolutely his role. But we also, as we go through life, no matter how much you love someone, you can't necessarily protect them from everything. So if you can't protect someone you love from something, what can you do? Stand by their side and shoulder the burden along with them as well. Miklash kalish. So we'll say it turns out that it's not really a shaila in marriage, but really ultimately it highlights the two dynamics in marriage. There's a time where my responsibility of a husband is mega's guyas. I am going to be the protector. And I will make sure that I cut off anything that is going to harm my wife. I will step in, I will be assertive, and I will protect. But in those moments where, unfortunately, I can't protect and prevent those difficulties from affecting my spouse, miklash kalish. I will absolutely stand by her side, shoulder the burden with her, so as to make it a little bit lighter. Incredible. So we'll say, my. So now by Nedarim, what's the shas? So we'll say, here we go. So we'll say, this is going to give you coming attractions. Here's what we're about to do now. I would say we are going to go through a whole bunch of cases that are all a Mishnah on Daf Ayin. So we're going to learn all of these cases in greater depth in just a little bit. So today we're going to do them a little bit superficially, just in order to go ahead and kind of get. And again, all of these cases are being brought down to answer our question. Essentially, what is the effect of partial revocation? What you're going to say, well, say all of these cases are being brought down only to get us to the last case, because it's the last case that has something to do with our question. The other ones really do not. So watch, here we go. So Tashma, Emasai Amru, when did we say Meis Habal Nisrok Norshos La'av? So we'll say, when do we say that if the husband dies, that the rights of revocation yield back to the father? So we'll say, so these are all Nara HaMu'urasa cases. So we'll say, so what we're asking over here is like this. You have an Nara HaMu'urasa. Now we'll say, husband dies. So is there a situation in which once husband dies, full revocatory powers? Good word, no? And it's only Sunday. Already making up new words on Sunday, right? It's going to be a good week, right? When do we say that if the husband dies, full revocatory... No, I don't think that's made up. I think that's legitimate, right? Full revocatory powers ultimately go back to the husband, to the father, excuse me. So I'll say, when is that? So Emasai Amru, Meis Habal Nisrok Norshos La'av. When do we say that if the husband dies, full revocatory powers go back to the father? Listen to this. Bizman shelo shama habal kodem shiyamus. In a situation where the husband never heard about the neder before he died. Oh, sheshama v'shasak. Or he heard about it and he was quiet. Oh, sheshama v'hefer. Or ultimately, again, he heard about it and he was made for it. Umeis bo bayom. And he died that day. So just to understand what's happening over here in this case, essentially, when do we say that if the husband dies, full revocatory powers go back to the father? When the husband did not do anything to undermine the revocation of this vow. So watch what's happening over. So when did the husband die? Either one of three possibilities. Either he died ultimately, again, he died, he never knew about the neder, right? Or he heard about the neder, but he was quiet. He heard about the neder and he revoked it on that day. Because also remember again, a husband's ability to go and revoke his wife's neder is only when? Biyom Sham'o, on the day that he heard it. So either he heard about it and he was quiet on that day, he heard about it and he annulled it on that day. So essentially what's happening over in this case is the husband didn't do anything to undermine the revocation of the neder. That's a case where if the husband dies, full revocatory powers go back to the father. So I will say, so take a look, by the way, at the last rush on the page. At the last Tosas on the page. We're going to look at the rush and Tosas. Let's start with the rush on the right-hand side of the page, right? All the way, last line, right? The rush and the Tosas. So Rush first, right hand side. Nisrok Nushas La'av. Kimo Adam Hamarek Sakov Nitan Lechavero. Kamashe Besakina Bal Nish Arekon Vahorish La'av Kos Kushayla. So we'll say, so the Lashon, by the way, of Nisrokna is like an emptying. The Rush says an emptying. The husband empties his rights into the sack of the father. Now look at Tosis. Last two lines. Dechivin de balo kiyim la yafra av achar mosabal. Avalim shama v'kiyim bal o shama v'shasa komeis biyom shala acharav davi akama and yachal afar. So I say, so again, when does full revocatory powers go back to the father? Again, as long as the husband didn't do anything to affirm the neder. See, the husband didn't know about it, or he died on the day that it was made and didn't say anything, or on the day that he died, he heard it and he revoked it. So in all of those cases, as long as the husband didn't do anything to affirm the neder, then full revocatory powers go back to the father. Okay, Amud Beis. Good. Next case. Aval. Here we go. Aval. Im shama habal v'kiyem. But I will say, if the husband heard about the neder and he affirmed the neder, sheshama v'shasak, or he heard about it and he was quiet, umeis biyom shala acharav. Then I will say, now remember again, in this case, what happened? The husband heard about the neder. What did he do? Nothing. When did he die? The next day. Now I will say, what happens if a husband hears about his wife's neder and doesn't say anything for a day? It's automatic affirmation. So I will say, so these are cases where the husband heard about the neder and either actively affirmed it or passively affirmed it. In that case, when the husband dies, ultimately again, revocatory power does not go back to the father, and the father does not have the ability to revoke the vow. Good, I will say, next case. Shama avia v'hefer law. So I'll say, here we go. So I will say, these are all Nara Murasa cases. All Nara Murasa. So what happens? Nara Murasa made a neder. Shama aviha. Her father heard it, v'hefer law. And ultimately, again, he annulled it. V'lo hispik bal lishmoa. Now, the husband never heard about it until ad shemei sa'av, until the father passed away. So I will say, so again, timeline. Girl, right now, Murasa made the neder. Father heard about it. Ultimately, again, he annulled it. Father dies, and then afterwards, again, the husband hears about the neder. Zohi sheshaninu meisa'av lo nisrokna rishus labal. Wow, so it was very interesting. This is a case where ultimately, again, we say that in this case, revocatory power does not go to the husband. Revocatory power does not go to the husband in this case. Now, I will say, take a look at the Ran for just a moment. It's the last wide line in the Ran. Shama avia v'hefer lo v'lo hispik abal l'shmoa ad shemei sa'av zoi sheshaninu mei sa'av lo nisrok l'shusabal. So I will say, so again, this is reverse the first case. So in this case over here, Nara Murasa made the neder. Father heard it. Father annulled it. Father died. Husband hears about it only after the death of the father. Husband does not have revocatory power. The Ran says, "Chazinu lehu lekamai." So the Amri demai diktani lo hispik abal lav dafka obichdei nasma. Good. Fine. Actually, the truth we don't have to really get into this Ran. Fine. Actually, take a look at the Rush. I will say, take a look at the Rush. The Rush says, if you look, it's the top Rush, forever, about 2, 4, 6, 8 lines into the Rush. So the Gemara says, Tema, so listen to this. So I will say, so why doesn't the husband have the ability to annul his portion? So I'm reading the Rush, left-hand side. Tema, Kevan sha'av hefer chelko, lama lo yafra abal chelko achar mo sa'av. Since the father annulled his portion, why can't the husband annul his portion? Ta'amridan la'el mei sa'av lo nisrak lo nishos labal. Hainu heicha de lo hefer ha'av. V'yisarach ha'aris lahafar kol ha'neder v'hu eini yoreis. Aval heicha shekvar hefer ha'av chalko lama yigra koach ha'abal b'misa'av v'yishlom. So I'll say, the Rush is asking, I don't understand. If the father annulled his portion, then why doesn't the husband still retain revocatory power to annul his portion? V'yishlom kevan de lo nigmara. He will say, here we go. Kevan de lo nigmara ha'afara b'chaya ha'av nispatla gam ha'afara sa'av v'utzorich lahafar ha'kol. Wow. And I will say, because what's happening over here is as follows. And I will say, like I said, we're gonna this is dafayim. We're gonna see this Gemara later on. This is not where this sugya belongs. It's only brought here to answer our question. I just wanted to show you this. So I will say, what the Rush is suggesting is, when father dies, essentially, the whole hafara process is batal. The whole hafara process is batal, and it's as if the father's hafara never occurred. And therefore, again, so good. That, I will say that's the Rosh's idea. We'll see all of this on Daf Ayin, but I will say what I just want to point out for you from this is something very interesting, which is you see that as much as we've been talking about the father and the husband kind of as partners in the revocation of the Nedarim of the Nara Murasa, they're not really full partners, right? They have very different roles, which is why you see that when the husband dies, full revocatory power goes back to the father, but yet ultimately, again, when the father dies, full revocatory power does not go to the husband, which is really quite interesting. Again, we'll discuss that distinction. Next case I will say, Shama Baila, the Heferla. Supposed to say again, same case, Nara Murasa, husband died, and husband heard that she made an eder, and what? He was made for it, he annulled it. And I will say again, here's the case. Nara Murasa made the vow, husband heard it, husband annulled it, husband died. After husband dies, what happened? Father heard about it, right? This is what we learned. Meis habal nisrokna rishus ha'av. I will say this is what we learned, that when the husband dies, ultimately what? Full revocatory power goes back to the father. Goes back to the father. Fine. Shama baila v'heferla. So we'll say next case. So again, right, Nara Murasa made the neder. Husband hears about it, annuls it. And I will say now the father never heard about it ultimately again, or didn't get a chance to hear about it before he died. So I will say, so again, timeline. Nara Murasa made the neder. Husband annulled it. Father died. But when did father die? Before ever having had the opportunity to hear about the neder. Ein habal yochel lahafer. Husband cannot go ahead and annul. Why? She'ein habal mefer ela b'shutfus. So we'll say, there it is. So we'll say, so that's pretty much like the principle. In other words, and again, we'll say, we're going to have to understand why this is true, right? Right now, we're outlining facts. And what we're outlining, essentially, I will say, is father could go ahead and inherit, or father could go ahead and regain full revocatory power, right, upon the death of the husband. Husband cannot go ahead and gain full revocatory power upon the death of the father. Why? It's that last line. Because the only way a husband, I will say, remember again, there's a very specific case. Which husband is this? Which husband? Erisin. Right? An Erisin husband can only revoke vows in shutfus with the father. Good. Now we'll say, here we go. Top of Samach Tes. Let's finish off the sugya. It's good, we'll say, because the truth is, there's a cheshbon with everything, right? Because we'll say, Tuesday is at Rabbi Teves, so I think we're starting what time? 5:45, I guess. Okay, good. Anyway, let's go back there. Shamavia, so we'll say, here we go. Shamavia, her father heard the neder. So again, next case. Right now, Murasa made the neder. She made the neder. Shamavia vehefer la, and ultimately again annulled the neder. V'lo hispik habal l'shmoa ad shemes. Okay, so we'll say so now. Timeline. Nara Murasa made the neder. She made the neder. Then what happened? Father heard it. Father annulled it. Right. Ultimately, again, husband didn't get a chance. V'lo hispik habal l'shmoa ad shemes. Husband never even heard about the neder before he died. Husband died, right? Never heard about it. So what's the halacha? Chozer ha'av umefer chelko shal baal. Father has the ability to go ahead and annul the portion of the husband. So we'll see interesting wording over here. Now, by the way, I just want to point out, these cases are not redundant. Right? Each of these cases has a nuanced difference, which we're going to see. But you see, I'm kind of making a little bit of a dash to the finish line in this because I want to get to the resolution of the question we asked. So we'll say, so again, but we'll get into all of this. So in this case, here, just to be clear. So what happened? Nara Murasa made a neder. Father heard it. What did father do? Annulled it. Husband died without ever even having known about the neder. So now what does the Gemara say? Ultimately, father has the ability, mefer chelko shel baal. Interesting wording. Father has the ability to revoke the portion of the now deceased husband. Okay, here it is. Rabbi Nosson. Rabbi Nosson says, hein divrei Beis Shammai. 1 second. This ability for the father to go ahead and revoke the portion of the now deceased husband, that's the opinion of Beis Shammai. That's the opinion of Beis Shammai. We'll say, take a quick look at the Ran. The Ran is on the left-hand side, about 4 lines into the short lines. Amr bin Hasan, Heinen Dibri Beishamai, de Kasabri Diachala Av Lahafer, Bechia Gavna, Ubafaras Chalko Shal Babelachud Sagi, Mishum Dafar Da'av Kevan de Lo Meis Lo Avat Lile. So this is Beishamai, who says that the father has the ability to go ahead and annul the portion of the now deceased husband. However, Beis Hillel Omrim Ein Yochal Lahafer. Beis Hillel, on the other hand, says no, that halacha l'maisa, the father does not have the ability to go ahead and annul the portion of the now deceased husband. I will say, take a look at the next round for just a moment. So I will say, good. So now, what's the reason for this? So we'll say, so here we go. Now, Ramurasa made the vow. Father heard it. Right? Next step, father annulled his portion. Next step, husband died without ever hearing about the neder. Beis Shammai says, father could come and be mevatel the portion of the husband. Beis Hillel says, no, he can't. Get ready for what I will say. What's the machlokes? Here we go. Shema mina, lebeis Shammai megas gayis. I will say, according to Beis Shammai, when you have partial revocation, what does partial revocation do? It lops off 50% of the neder. Lops off 50% of the neder. Lebeis Hillel miklash kayish. According to Beis Hillel, he holds that no, partial revocation, what does it do? It diminishes, it weakens neder. So we'll say, watch, let me tell you this outside, then we'll see it inside. This is so incredible. So watch this. Get ready, here it is. So according to Shammai, let's play this out. Very exciting. So listen to this. Now Ramurasa makes the neder. Okay, here we go. Now Ramurasa makes the neder. Right, what happens? Father hears about it, is mevatel it, or mefer it. Okay? Husband died without ever hearing about the neder. According to Beis Shammai, I will say, what happens when father annulled his portion? What happened? Megas Gaius. He lopped off 50% of the neder, which means that there is still 50% of the neder outstanding. Then I will say, according to Beis Shammai, 50% of the neder outstanding is a significant right. Because it's a significant right, it's an inheritable right. And because it's an inheritable right, the father is the one who inherits it from the husband and could therefore go ahead and annul the rest of the neder. Beautiful. According to Beis Hillel, on the other hand, partial revocation on both sides does what? Partial revocation, miklash kalish, diminishes the isser. So the father does his part, the husband still has his part. So both say the husband's right is what we'll call a negligible right. It's not significant. So because it's not significant when the husband dies, therefore what? It's not inheritable. So because it's not inheritable, therefore the father doesn't have the ability to act on it. Absolutely fascinating. So I will say, so what the Gemara is just saying, and the reason you'll say, why isn't it significant? Because I will say, if you think about it, really, like 50% is a quantifiable, manageable thing, right? In other words, I understand, according to Beis Shammai, Mega's guy is, father has 50%, husband has 50%. Husband died, that 50% is significant. So therefore, Lamaisikin, that's inheritable by the father. Therefore, according to Beis Shammai, when the husband dies, the father inherits the husband's power of revocation. Miklash kalish, what does it mean? You diminish this, or what does it mean to diminish an isser? It's more usser, it's less usser, it's much more ambiguous. So because it's much more ambiguous, therefore what? It's not defined. Obviously, if it's ambiguous, it's not defined. And because of that, again, it's not significant enough to be deemed an inheritable right. And therefore, when the husband passes away, the father ultimately, again, does not inherit that right. I will say now, look, what I just told you is inside the Ran. Here we go. So we'll say it's in the Ran. Divrei HaMaskal, the bold line is Aval Beis Hillel Omrim Ein Yochel Lahafer Klal. So we'll say 2 lines into that. According to Beis Shammai, ultimately again, when you go ahead and you annul the neder, or I should say when this partial application megas gayis, when the father annulled the neder, he annulled his 50%. The 50% of the husband was totally unimpacted. Rather, 50% of the neder, that's their husband's portion, is fully intact. That's significant, and therefore what? That is deemed an inheritable right. Beis Hillel, miklash kalish. According to Beis Hillel, on the other hand, ultimately what happens when there's partial revocation? It diminishes the isser. Miklash kalish. K'shefra av chelko, nigra chelko, shabal. Ve'eno chashiv lo rishon la'av. When the father diminishes his portion, there's still a diminished isser left to the husband, for the husband. And ultimately, again, it's not chashiv enough. It's not important enough to be deemed an inheritable right. Lo batlala vakati nodra bekilush takai. V'chevin dekalish leichalko shabal lo matzi mefer av. Shabbos says it's pretty incredible. So the Gemara wants to suggest. Shabbos says so. Therefore, again, now we've come full circle. Shabbos say, so what is the halacha when there is partial revocation? So at the end of the day, what does partial revocation do? Is it miklash kalish? Or I should say, is it megas gayas? There's partial revocation. Lop off 50% of the neder, or miklash kalish? Does it simply downgrade the isra of the neder? What's the answer? Machlokes. Beis Shammai holds megas gayas, right? Beis Hillel holds ultimately again miklash kalish, to which the Gemara says shema mina. And I both say we're not going to do the halacha l'maisa on this because we're not finished with the sugya. There's still more to the sugya, but I both say I just want to point out now the one glaring question. I both say, what's the one glaring question with this? One glaring question is, how does this stem with what we said before, right? Which is that halacha l'maisa. We said that in order for a husband and a father to revoke the neder of the Nedarim, what do you need? Joint simultaneity. So how does that stem? In other words, I will say, so I don't understand even how the question gets off the ground. Right? What do you mean inheritable rights? The only way it works is if they do it jointly and simultaneously. So again, that's why I'm not doing. That's how I'm not. I know how badly you want the Rambam. I see it on your face. But I'm sorry. Sometimes you have to discipline with love. Right? I'm sorry. I'm teaching you a little bit of restraint. You have to hold back. Right? So let's say. So ultimately, again, we're gonna hold back on the Rambam a little bit. But again, what I just want to point out is the megas. So let's say here's the conclusion. So now the Gemara asks, what's the halacha, miklash kalish or megas guys when there's partial revocation? The answer is it's a machlokes Hashem Yisrael. So remember again, the machlokes only applies to the halacha. The hashkafa of bal megas gayes, miklash kalish, being a type of spouse who's able to protect, but also again partner is shouldering the love. That's not subject to dispute. Rabbi say that everybody agrees ultimately is necessary for a successful marriage. Rabbi say stop over here for today. Mesilas Yesharim, Mesilas Shalom Schapin. All right, so we'll say good morning. We are continuing Mirz Hashem in Perek Yud Tes. We actually, we didn't finish Fridays. Shabbos, you're picking up Perek Yud Tes, Benefesh. Shabbos, remember again, we're talking about the midah of Chasidus. So the midah of Chasidus, we've seen what does it mean to be a Chasid. To be a Chasid, Shabbos, if you're following along in the Hebrew version, the Hachzek version, it's page 105. Page 105. Page 105, second paragraph down. In the Hebrew, page 105, second paragraph down. So I'll say, so Benefesh, remember again, in Chasidus, what have we been talking about? In Chasidus, we've been focusing on, what does it mean to be a Chasid? To be a Chasid means to go above and beyond. Ultimately, again, we spoke about there are three levels of Chasidus. You could be a Chasid b'maisa, in actions, a Chasid ultimately, again, in the manner in which you perform those actions, and a Chasid with kavanah, with your intentions. In the world of Maisa, in the world of actional Chasidus, there's two levels. Ben Adam Lamakom, Ben Adam Lechabero. Ben Adam Lamakom, I understand, mitzvos are an expression of divine intent, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. Once what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants, I have the ability to go above and beyond expectations, exceed expectations. Now we're focused on Ben Adam Lechabero. So Benefesh, what does it mean to go above and beyond when it comes to the nefesh with the soul of your friend? I will say, whatever you can do to give koras ruach, I will say koras ruach is one of those beautiful words. Koras ruach means, how would you translate koras ruach? A quietude, a sense of tranquility. Whatever you could do to give a sense of tranquility to your friend. Bein be'inyane hakavid, bein b'chol sharin yonim. Kamashu yodeh shim yaseh lechaveru mekabel nachas ruach min. I will say, whatever you could do for a person, give them nachas ruach, inner quietude, inner tranquility, to make them happy. Mitzvahs chasidus ulasoso. So I will say, remember, A tzaddik, what does a tzaddik do? A tzaddik is, Hashem gives me mitzvos ben adam lechaveiro, I'm going to fulfill those mitzvos. What does a chassid do? A chassid goes above and beyond. Whatever I could do to give happiness to another person, whatever I could do to settle another person, to give calm and serenity to another person, to make another person feel, that's what I'm going to do. The choshekain, shelo yitzarena b'shom minei tzar klan. It goes without saying that I avoid doing things that will give another person tsar. Yebe'eza ofed shiyeh uklaza hu gemilas chasadim asher fligu chacham zichron levracha b'shal chosinaba. So remember again, when it comes to the nefesh of the other, the chassid, bless you, the chassid does whatever is within his power to go ahead and give nachas ruach, to give a sense of tranquility and happiness. So we'll say, such a beautiful idea. So what could I do to make you happy? I will say, what could I do to make you feel settled? What could I do to make you feel at ease? So again, certainly it's the avoidance of anything that's going to give you tsar, right? Certainly it's the avoidance of anything that's going to cause you pain. But it's more than that. It's chesed. What could I do for you on a chesed level? I will say, ridifa shalom, running after peace. Running after peace. What could I do to affect shalom within my relationships? That's what a chesed looks for. V'ata. So we'll say, so now we finished this section, right? In this section now, the Ramchal has outlined for us, right? So we'll say the first element of Chasidus, which is in Maisa, actional Chasidus. And actional Chasidus, again, manifests itself in my actions, bein Adam l'makom, and my actions, bein Adam l'chabero. Those are the two components. Now we'll say the Ramchal, I want to bring you some examples. These are great. So we'll say, here we go. We'll say, I love these Gemaras. So we'll say, so the truth is, these Gemaras are so beautifully profound. The Yomi Maseches Megillah has a number of them. They also appear in Shabbos. These Gemaras where students ask their Rebbe, to what do you attribute your longevity? To what do you attribute your longevity, right? In other words, Baruch Hashem, you've lived a long life. What do you attribute your longevity to? So I'll say, Amar Lahem, listen to this. Miyamai lo hishtanti b'soch arba amos shel tefillah. Says, number one, I never urinated within dalet amos of tefillah. I said, by the way, okay, check, right, good, right. That one, I can definitely handle that one. I was going to say, so understand, right? Sometimes you just have to go for the small wins in life, right? So I'll say, so what I just want to point out over here is, remember, they're talking about right? Remember, there's no set Beis HaKisei, right? There's no set lavatories. So he's saying that I was just always very makbid that I never took care of my bodily needs within Dalar Amos of wherever we were davening, right? So there's a kavod tefillah. V'lo kinisi shim lechaveri. I never called my friend by a nickname. V'lo bitalti kiddush hayom. And ultimately, again, whatever it took, I never missed out on making Kiddush. In other words, we'll say that he was makbid to always make Kiddush. Actually, the footnote over here points out, the Kaddish ala yain b'leil Shabbos. He was makbid to always obtain wine to make Kiddush Friday night. Let's analyze. So he tells a story. So again, this is Rabbi Zakkai said, Ima Zakina Hais, my mother was very old. Pam achos makra kippah sheberasha ve'avila Kiddush. And one time, she literally sold her kippah. She sold her hat from her head in order to obtain funds from me, so I can make Kiddush for wine on Friday night. He didn't ask her to do that. She did that of her own volition. So watch this. So now the Ramchal points out over here, embedded in this. So I just want to point out, the students of Rabbi Zakkai are saying, Rebbe, to what do you attribute your longevity? Number one, I was careful ultimately again with davening. I was makbid to never relieve myself within Dalar Amos Tefillah. Number two, I never called someone by a nickname, even my friends. Number three, I never neglected to make Kiddush on a cup of wine. So let's talk about this. So you see from here an incredible chasidus in terms of adherence to the details of mitzvahs. Are you obligated to sell your clothing to obtain wine to make Kiddush? No, there's no obligation like that. The first you can make Kiddush on Challah, right? There's no obligation like that. At the end of the day, Rabbi Zakkai was makbid on the mitzvahs. So a chassid says, I know I don't have to sell off clothing to go ahead and make kiddush, but lamaisa, the chassid says, I want to do whatever I can to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the chassid goes above and beyond expectations and does whatever has to get done in order to serve my God in the appropriate way. So that was chasidus bein adam lamakom. What about chasidus bein adam lechavero? Listen to this. So let's listen to this. Bein adam lechavero, he made sure to never call his friend by a nickname. Never say, it goes without saying a nickname that's disparaging, right? We're not even talking about that, right? This is even a nickname that's not disparaging. Still, Rabbi Zakkai was makbid to not call his friend by a nickname. I'm not going to use a nickname for someone. For Rav Huna, gam kin kasher gemi, shalavusho, lefi shem machar hemanyo, liknos hanakisha. So, but just another example. We'll say, Rav Huna sold his belt in order to obtain wine to go out and make kiddush. Right? He used the reed as a belt. He sold his other. We'll say another example. Now what? Is there an obligation to sell your belt to make kiddush? Absolutely, or for wine for kiddush? Absolutely not. But I will say, but that's ultimately again what the chassid does. The chassid exceeds the expectations. V'odamru. We'll see another example of this. Sha'alu Talmidim Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua. The students asked Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua. Rabbi, how did you merit longevity? Amr lahem, miyamai lo asisi kapandari lebeis haknesses. I never used the shul as a shortcut. V'lo pasati arashi am kodesh. And I never trampled on the heads of the students. Rabbi said, now what does that mean? So hine zeh hamidos v'yin kvor beis haknesses, so v'yin kvor akbrios, shol so agam misibason, shol leiros k'mevaza osan. So Rabbi say, so again, what does it mean he never trampled on the heads of the students? So Rabbi say, remember, the students used to sit on the ground when the Rebbe would give shiur. So what would happen? Rabbi Elazar ben Shmuel was saying, I never came late to shiur. Because if I came late to shiur, what would happen? I would end up it looked like walking on top of the Talmidim. So I was always makbid to get there before the Talmidim, so it would never have the appearance of walking on top of them. Now I will say once again, would Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua be warranted in walking in after Talmidim? Of course, but he was makbid not to do anything that should be perceived as a slight to the dignity of the other. The same way that he was careful not to do anything which would be perceived as a slight to the kedusha of a beis haknesses. Rabbi said this is midas chasidus. Va'od sham shalu talmidim es Rabbi Preda. So ultimately the talmidim asked Rabbi Preda, but maharachtem Rabbi, to what? Why did you merit longevity? Amar lahem. Listen to this. Miyamai lo kedamani adon lebeis hamedrash. No one ever got to the beis medrash before me. I was always the first guy in the beis medrash. For lo perachti lifnei kohen. I never went ahead and I never led benching when there was a coin present. And I never ate from an animal, ultimately again, from which the matnos kahuna were not separated. Rabbi say, once again, examples of midas chasidus. One more, Amru od, shalu tamidas Rabbi Nechunya, hamarachtem Rebbe, how did you merit longevity? Amr lahem, miyamai, lonis kabaratim biklon chaverai. I never allowed myself to be honored through the degradation of my friend. And I never went to sleep, literally again with the curse of my friend upon me. What does that mean? Listen to this. One time, Rav Huna was carrying a shovel. Rav Chana bar Chanilai wanted to take the shovel from Rav Huna. He felt it wasn't appropriate for Rav Huna to be carrying a shovel. So Rav Huna says to him, Amarlei, Iragilas tedaris b'masach dari. If you normally carry a shovel in your city, then I'll let you carry it. V'ilo, but if you do not normally carry a shovel in your hometown, isyakuri ana bezilusa didach lo nechali. I will not have my covet upheld through your degradation. Now, I will say, this was a case ultimately again where Rav Chana was offering to take it from Rav Huna, but Rav Huna refused to allow his honor to be bolstered through the perceived degradation of another. Harilanu, shi'afa pisha mashmos, biklon chavero, who are mishtadel levazos chavero, kedei sha'ai dezeh yirbe kvod. Even though again it sounds like that, what does it mean? Shali yiskabe, when he says, miyamai lo niskabarati biklon chaverai, what that sounds like actively degrading another so as to bolster yourself up. Hine lechasidim lo yeos lekabel kavod afilu mechaveru hu haba misratze bazeh im yeh bazeh bezen lechaveru bazeh. What do you see? The chassid does not want any form of kavod. If somehow his kavod is going to result in the degradation of another, even if the other is willingly offering up this degradation, so to speak, even if the other is willingly, Rabbi say that's the chassid. The chassid does not want anything negative happening towards another team. So Rabbi say, so again, we'll see, we're going to stop over here today, we'll see more examples of this, but the takeaway message is, this is all chasidus b'maisa, actional chasidus. And the actional chasidus represents transcending, or I should say, exceeding expectations, both in the realm of bin Adam lamakom and bin Adam l'chavera. Bosai shkoyach.